Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of the Tunguska Event, the explosion that flattened 2,000 square kilometers with no impact crater. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction. Not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. On June 30, 1908, at 7:17 in the morning, an explosion occurred over a remote region of Siberia that flattened 150 square kilometers of forest, an area roughly the size of a major city, and knocked people off their feet 60 kilometers away. The blast was estimated at 1,000 times the power of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. Windows shattered in towns hundreds of kilometers distant. The atmospheric pressure wave circled the Earth twice and was detected by barometers in England. No impact crater was ever found. The first scientific expedition did not reach the remote epicenter until 1927, 19 years after the event. What Leonid Kulik found when he arrived: standing trees at the epicenter, stripped bare but still upright, surrounded by tens of millions of fallen trees pointing outward in a radial pattern, told him something had exploded above the ground, not struck it. The Tunguska Event is the largest impact event in recorded human history. The object that caused it left no fragment large enough to hold in your hand. For nearly a century, no one could agree on what it was. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the landscape of modern documented mysteries, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. Governments keep secrets. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is documented fact, confirmed by declassified archives, freedom of information disclosures, and the confessions of officials long after the events in question. The United States government ran secret programs to test psychedelic drugs on unwitting civilians, culture, to spy on its own citizens, COINTELPRO, and to cover up nuclear testing incidents that killed American soldiers. The British government suppressed information about UFO encounters by military personnel for decades. The Soviet Union systematically falsified scientific data to maintain ideological conformity. None of this means that every government secret involves supernatural phenomena or alien contact. The reality of classified programs is almost always more mundane. Military technology being tested covertly, intelligence operations that cannot be publicly acknowledged, or simply the bureaucratic instinct to classify first and justify later. Most UFO sightings that turn out to have official explanations were classified aircraft. Most government denials of anomalous phenomena are straightforwardly honest. The phenomena being denied are simply not real. But the documented history of government secrecy has a practical effect on investigative credibility. When officials deny knowledge of events that witnesses describe in compelling detail, that denial cannot be taken at face value without independent corroboration. The proven track record of institutional concealment means that institutional denial, however authoritative it sounds, is not the same as evidence of absence. This complicates every modern mystery that touches on official narrative. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding the Tunguska event, the explosion that flattened 2,000 square kilometers with no impact crater is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. The Tunguska explosion occurred at approximately 7:17 a.m. local time on June 30, 1908, above the Podkamennaya Tunguska River in Siberia, Russia. The explosion flattened approximately 150 square kilometers of forest and is estimated to have released energy equivalent to 10-15 megatons of TNT, between 500 and 1,000 times the yield of the Hiroshima nuclear bomb. Seismic stations as far away as Jena, Germany recorded the equivalent of a magnitude 5.0 earthquake. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes, but as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered eyewitnesses within 60 kilometers of the epicenter reported seeing a blue-white streak crossing the sky, followed by a flash brighter than the sun and a shockwave that knocked people off their feet, shattered windows, and threw livestock off the ground. Indigenous Evenki people living in the region described trees catching fire and a wave of heat. Several people and reindeer were reported killed or injured by the blast effect. No impact object was found by any of the initial witnesses who visited the area. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Leonid Kulik of the Soviet Academy of Sciences led the first scientific expedition to the Tunguska epicenter in 1927, 19 years after the event. He found trees at the exact epicenter still standing but completely stripped of branches, a signature of a vertical pressure wave, while trees extending outward in all directions for up to 30 kilometers were felled radially, pointing away from the epicenter. The butterfly-shaped pattern of felled trees was consistent with an airburst rather than a ground impact. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation, but the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, the atmospheric pressure wave generated by the Tunguska explosion circled the Earth twice and was detected by barometers at Kew Observatory in England and meteorological stations across Europe. Unusual atmospheric optical effects, glowing night skies, silvery clouds, were reported across Europe and Russia for several nights following the explosion, attributed to dust and ice particles injected into the upper atmosphere. The event was large enough to affect global atmospheric measurements. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Kulik proposed a comet as the causative object. The lack of crater and absence of metallic fragments suggested an icy body that vaporized completely on entry. Subsequent research favored a stony asteroid airburst after microparticles of magnetite and silicate spherules, consistent with vaporized rocky material, were extracted from peat cores at the site. The asteroid hypothesis was supported by modeling of the explosion's energy signature and the 2013 Chelyabinsk airburst, which provided a real-time comparable event. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding. Lake Chico, located approximately 8 kilometers from the epicenter, was proposed by Italian researchers in 2007 as a possible impact crater formed by a surviving fragment of the Tunguska object. Sediment cores from the lake were presented as supporting this hypothesis. Subsequent analysis by other researchers dated the lake's sediments to significantly earlier than 1908 and its shape to natural glacial processes, effectively disproving the impact crater hypothesis. Lake Chico is now considered a pre-existing feature unrelated to the 1908 event. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain the Tunguska event, the explosion that flattened 2,000 square kilometers with no impact crater. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that the current scientific consensus, supported by Sandia National Laboratories modeling from 2007 and updated NASA analysis from 2019, identifies the Tunguska event as the airburst of a stony asteroid approximately 50-80 meters in diameter at an altitude of 5-10 kilometers. Stony asteroids lack the structural integrity to survive passage through the lower atmosphere intact and explode violently before impact, explaining the total absence of an impact crater and large surviving fragments. Microspheral chemistry from peat cores is consistent with this model. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that the comet hypothesis, proposed by Kulik in 1927 and subsequently developed by various researchers, held that an icy cometary nucleus vaporized completely on entry, explaining the lack of crater and metallic fragments. The comet hypothesis was the dominant explanation for decades. It has been largely superseded by the stony asteroid model, which better fits the energy signature, the spheral chemistry, and the entry trajectory modeling derived from the eyewitness account distribution and tree fall pattern. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that fringe theories have attributed Tunguska to Nikola Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower, claimed to have directed energy towards Siberia in an experiment, to an antimatter meteoroid that annihilated on contact with the atmosphere, and to a miniat, your black hole passing through the Earth. Tesla's Wardenclyffe Tower was inoperational and financially collapsed by 1908. The antimatter and black hole hypotheses are physically possible in principle, but produce predicted signatures, gamma radiation, exit event, absent from the observational record. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding the Tunguska Event, the explosion that flattened 2,000 square kilometers with no impact crater, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes the radial pattern of 80 million felled trees, extending up to 30 kilometers from the epicenter and pointing outward in all directions, is inconsistent with a ground impact and consistent with an aerial explosion directing pressure downward and outward simultaneously. Standing but stripped trees at the exact epicenter confirm the explosion was directly above that point. This butterfly-shaped fall pattern, mapped by Kulik and extended by Soviet researchers through the mid-20th century, is the primary physical evidence constraining the explosion's altitude and energy. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented magnetite and silicate spherules extracted from peat cores at the Tunguska site are chemically consistent with vaporized stony asteroid material and inconsistent with cometary ice or terrestrial sources. Their distribution in the peat layer corresponding to 1908 confirms they were deposited by the explosion. Similar spherules were recovered from the Chelyabinsk 2013 airburst site, providing a modern comparative dataset that confirms the spherule signature as characteristic of stony asteroid airbursts. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed the February 2013 Chelyabinsk meteor airburst over Russia provided a real-time analog to the Tunguska event at approximately 1/30th the energy. Chelyabinsk produced a shockwave that shattered windows across a wide area, injured over 1,500 people, and left no impact crater, confirming the mechanism proposed for Tunguska. NASA's subsequent modeling, incorporating Chelyabinsk data, refined the Tunguska object's estimated size to 50-80 meters and its entry trajectory. Tunguska is now considered a 1/500 to 1,000 years event class. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding the Tunguska event, The explosion that flattened 2,000 square kilometers with no impact crater. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. Sandia National Laboratory's 2007 modeling and NASA 2019 updated analysis confirm the Tunguska Event as a stony asteroid airburst at 510 kilometers altitude. The 2013 Chelyabinsk airburst provided direct observational confirmation of the mechanism. June 30 is now designated Asteroid Day, an international awareness event established in 2015 to mark the Tunguska anniversary and promote planetary defense research. No fragments large enough for museum display have ever been recovered from the Tunguska event. Lake Chico, briefly proposed as a fragment crater, was disproved by sediment dating. The most complete scientific understanding of what happened over Siberia on June 30, 1908 was reached only in the 2000s, nearly a century after the event. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of the Tunguska event, the explosion that flattened 2,000 square kilometers with no impact crater, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Tunguska event ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle, it is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process. And the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.